You ever wonder what really holds our modern economy together? I mean, it's not just money or products, right? At its very core, it's trust. It's this belief that the companies we deal with are, playing by the rules. So today, we're going to break down the system that's designed to protect that very trust: corporate governance. And that's a huge question, isn't it? Because when that foundation of trust cracks, wow, the fallout can be absolutely massive. And this isn't some theoretical what-if scenario. We have seen this play out in some pretty spectacular and, honestly, devastating ways.
So before we can really get into the solution, we've got to understand the problem. Let's rewind the clock a bit, to a time when some of the biggest names in the business world became famous, but for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, these names probably ring a bell. Back in the early 2000s, Enron and WorldCom, these weren't just companies, they were absolute titans. And their collapse, it was sudden, it was spectacular, and it sent shockwaves through the entire global financial system. We're talking billions in value just gone, and so many livelihoods destroyed.
So, what on earth happened? Well, as you can see here, these weren't just simple mistakes or bad luck. This was a complete systemic breakdown. We're talking about straight-up corruption, major conflicts of interest where executives were just lining their own pockets, and a total misuse of the company's resources. This wasn't just bad business. It was a fundamental, deep betrayal of trust.
Okay, so out of all that chaos, there was this massive demand for a better way to do things. It really sparked a global movement to strengthen the rules of the game, to build a formal system to try and stop these kinds of failures from ever happening again.
All right, so here's the textbook definition, and it's actually really important. Corporate governance isn't just some vague buzzword. It's a real, concrete system. It's the framework, the rulebook, really, that dictates how a company is directed and how it's controlled. You can almost think of it as the company's constitution.
But let's break that down even more. What does this system actually do? Well, first, it's about directing the company, setting its goals and strategy. Second, it's about managing risks, spotting them before they blow up. And third, it's about monitoring performance, constantly checking to make sure the company is on the right track and, operating ethically.
And all of those functions are built on these three essential pillars. You've got accountability, making sure someone is actually responsible for what happens. Then there's transparency, which is all about making sure decisions aren't happening behind closed doors. And finally, fairness, which means the company has to think about everyone involved, not just the folks at the top. And I love this slide because it just lays it all out so clearly. The pillars of good governance are the direct antidote to the problems we saw before. Corruption? That's where accountability comes in. Those conflicts of interest and secrecy? Transparency is the cure. And the misuse of resources? Fairness puts a stop to that. It's a perfect matchup.
Okay, so the problem was clear, the principles of the solution were on the table, so lawmakers got to work. Let's dig into how their response actually built the system we have today.
This timeline really shows you just how fast things moved. Those scandals in the early 2000s were a massive wake-up call. And by 2002, a landmark piece of legislation was passed. And believe me, its influence is still shaping global standards even today.
Right, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, or SOX as pretty much everyone calls it, this thing was a total game changer. It brought in super strict new rules for financial reporting, created serious criminal penalties for fraud, and, this is a big one, it forced executives to personally sign off on their company's financial statements. The whole era of plausible deniability or just looking the other way, yeah, that was officially over.
So that's the history lesson. But what about now? How do these rules and principles actually work inside a big company today? Like, who's in charge of making sure it all gets done?
Well, it really starts at the top. The board of directors has the ultimate responsibility. Then you've got these specialized audit committees reporting to them. Their whole job is to dig into the finances. And finally, you have the shareholders themselves, the actual owners of the company. They get mechanisms and a voice to hold the leadership accountable. And you know what? It works. There are tons of companies today that are seen as models of strong corporate governance. Two really great examples that always come up are Microsoft and Nestle. Both of them have built their massive global success on a solid foundation of trust. So let's take a look at what they're actually doing. Take Microsoft. They're famous for having these powerful, independent audit boards. And that's key, because it means the people checking the books don't report to the same CEO they might be investigating. That ensures real accountability. Then you've got a giant global company like Nestle. For them, it's all about super transparent reporting. This is absolutely critical for building investor trust across all the different countries they operate in. It creates one single, reliable standard. And look, these aren't just policies sitting in a binder somewhere. These are active practices that really define their whole corporate culture.
Okay, so right about now you might be thinking, this is all pretty interesting for CEOs and big-time investors, but what does it have to do with me? Well, as it turns out, it has pretty much everything to do with you.
See, good governance isn't just about protecting the company itself. It's about protecting everyone connected to it. It protects investors. Doesn't matter if you have a huge portfolio or just a small retirement account. It protects employees by making sure the company is stable and ethical. And it protects the public, all of us, by preventing that kind of massive economic damage we saw with scandals like Enron. So as we start to wrap this up, let's nail down the key takeaways. Number 1, good governance is our main defense against corporate corruption. Simple as that. Number 2, it's the system that makes sure management is actually working for all stakeholders, not just for themselves. And finally, number 3, it's the absolute bedrock of trust that our entire modern economy relies on.
Look, we've come a long, long way since those scandals back in the day. The rules are definitely stronger now, and the systems are way more robust. But that leaves us with one last, really crucial question to chew on. Does having a better system automatically guarantee accountability, or does that still come down to the vigilance of all of us?